Welcome to another episode of Software Explorations, Concept Overviews, hosted by yours truly, Tech Coach Ralph. Today, we are going to be going over non-functional testing. So last time we did functional testing, now we're going to go over and get a good overview on what non-functional testing is. So before we get into that, I think that most QA people are very familiar with the functional testing. That seems to be like the one that has the most work revolving around it. Is very hands-on, very it's like an everyday thing, right? But most QAs, I believe, they're not very familiar with non-functional testing. So when we are not familiar with something here on the Tech Coach Ralph YouTube channel, what do? Well, we dive deep into it and we figure it out. And that is what we are going to get started on today. So our topic for today is understanding non-functional testing. Let's start to dive into it. So what's our agenda for today? Well, we're going to cover what is the importance of non-functional testing, what non-functional testing actually is, the types of non-functional testing. We're going to explore each type of those, and then some non-functional testing strategies, the process, and some best practices. So why does it matter? Why does non-functional testing matter? Non-functional testing is essential because it addresses aspects of software quality that are critical to user satisfaction and success of the product. Neglecting non-functional aspects can lead to performance issues, security breaches, poor user experience, and other problems that can happen, and other problems that can harm the reputation of the software and the organization behind it. So what is non-functional testing then, all right? So non-functional testing focuses on evaluating the attributes of a system or application that goes beyond its basic functionality. So let's see if we can break this down a little bit, right? The functional testing is following a bunch of steps where you have expected results and you compare those expected results to the actual results, all right? And if they deviate, if they differ, you open up some type of defect report and you file it with the developers, and then they get that taken care of, right? However, on the non-functional side, these are things that they might have certain benchmarks, but they don't necessarily have a particular set of steps to follow. It's not based on functionality, but based on expectation of usually like availability and accessibility, things like that, all right? And safety measures. So non-functional testing assesses various aspects of the software's performance, security, usability, and more. The goal of non-functional testing is to ensure that the software not only works correctly, but also meets the highest standards of quality in various non-functional areas. Okay, so some examples of non-functional testing includes performance testing, security testing, usability testing, compatibility testing, and load testing. All right. Now, what are some test cases revolved around non-functional testing? So the testing involves creating test cases that assess specific non-functional attributes of the software, such as the response time, security vulnerabilities, and things of that nature. Non-functional testing is categorized into different types based on the specific quality attributes being tested. So certain type of security tests are grouped together, performance and load testing are grouped together, things of that nature. So here is a list of the types of non-functional testing. And after I read it, we'll go back and address each one of them a little bit more like a better description of each one of them? So we have, so here are the types of non-functional testing. We have performance testing, security, usability, reliability, compatibility, scalability, load, stress, availability, internationalization and localization, and lastly, compliance. So now let's see what each one of those actually are. Let's see what each one of those actually test. So, what is performance testing? Performance testing involves assessing how well the software performs under different conditions. It includes testing for factors like response time, throughput, scalability, and resource utilization. How about security testing? So, security testing aims to identify vulnerabilities and weaknesses in the software's security mechanisms. It includes activities such as penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, and authentication slash authorization testing. All right, so there goes so all types of security involved around it. Usability testing focuses on the user experience aspect of the software. It evaluates how user-friendly the interface is, whether the user can easily navigate and interact with the application, and if the software is accessible to all users. Reliability testing. This testing verifies the software's ability to consistently perform well over time. It includes tests for stability, fault tolerance, and recovery after failures. Compatibility testing checks how well the software functions across different platforms, devices, browsers, and operating systems. How about scalability testing? So, scalability testing examines how well the software can handle increasing workload and user interactions without degrading the performance. Now we get to load testing. Load testing involves subjecting the software to varying levels of load to determine its behavior under typical and peak usage hours. Well, let's get into stress testing. Stress testing goes beyond load testing by pushing the software to its limits, often to the point of breaking, to understand its failure points and performance bottlenecks. Next, we get to availability testing. Availability testing ensures that the software remains accessible and operational for use as intended without excessive downtime. Now we get to internationalization and localization testing. This testing ensures that the software is suitable for different languages, cultures, and regions. Lastly, compliance testing checks whether the software adheres to industry regulations, standards, and legal requirements. So, what's the testing process for non-functional testing? It is somewhat similar to the functional testing process, but this one is more focused on the non-functional aspect. So, the process is planning, test case design, test execution, and lastly, analysis and reporting. So, what are some non-functional testing tools? All right, so we'll just list off a few for each category listed below. For performance testing, we have Apache JMeter, Gatling, LoadRunner, and Locus. For security testing, we have OWASP, ZAP, Z Attack Proxy, Burp Suite, Nexus, and Acunetics. For usability testing, we have user testing, Crazy Egg, Optimal Workshop, and then we go down to reliability, which they have Chaos Monkey, Simian Army, and then under compatibility, we have AWS Device Farm, Browser Stack, Sauce Labs. All right, so, and then under accessibility, we have Axe and Wave. All right, let's move on. So, what are some challenges for non-functional testing? I think one of the biggest challenges is getting a realistic test environment, right? Because we are pretty much creating an environment based on what our assumed production traffic is going to be. But it's always challenging to create realistic test environments because you just don't have that type of user interaction in it. Another challenge is obtaining accurate metrics because the different tools that are being used, they don't necessarily all like have a mechanism to log to the same place, especially when we're going cross language and cross testing environments. So obtaining those accurate metrics can be super difficult. And lastly, reproducing security scenarios, they tend not to last that much, but when they do happen, they happen for a little bit. But then by the time that you're ready to address it, it's just not there anymore. So the last one is reproducing security scenarios. All right, so what are some best practices for non-functional testing? So definitely, which I always preach, regardless of whether it's non-functional or functional testing, we should be testing early and they make the use of continuous integration. Then we have having a good traceability between requirements and test cases. Okay, we need to be able to link the requirements to the actual test cases. We should also have a robust regression test suite so that we can just trigger the test whenever we need and they will execute. And the same way that we have this for functional testing, we should also have it for non-functional testing. And lastly, exploratory testing to navigate around, see what's going on. And, it just gives you a different perspective when you're doing exploratory testing as well. All right, so we've reached the end. What did we get out of this, right? So the conclusion is now we know the importance of non-functional testing. It can actually cost a lot of money if if things are not tested properly and we have some significant bugs enter to our production environment, or the site is too slow. That can be quite a hefty fee. All right. Now, is functional testing more important than non-functional testing? Well, tell me what you think, right? But here's what I'm going to go with. It is absolutely not more important than non-functional testing. To me, they're both equal because if you don't have one, then the other becomes useless. So to give an example of why functional testing and non-functional testing are on equal playing fields in my book is, let's say you have a shopping cart, right? And you want to make sure that the checkout flow is working. However, when you click it and nothing happens, so now the functionality is not working. But let's say the functionality is working, but then you try to load the page and it just keeps spinning, and now you can't check out because the page doesn't load properly, right? So that is an example of non-functional testing being very important. So here's the question: do all QAs do non-functional testing? Honestly, it depends on the company that you work for. Some companies will require QA to do it. Some companies, they have the developers doing it. And, so it just depends, right? I'll say this, all QAs should know how to use the basic tools for non-functional testing. In case you do end up having to do that, then you will be able to master it, right? So the last thing is just go out there and try it out. Write some non-functional tests and let's try to run them and see how they perform, and then we can iterate from there. All right. So I hope you enjoyed that software exploration, going through what is non-functional testing and how it plays a huge role in the software development lifecycle. So let me know, have you done any non-functional testing before? Leave me a comment or put it in the chat. And I would love to hear about your experiences in QA and in functional testing and non-functional testing, all of that good stuff, all right? But on that note, I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, this is Tech Coach Ralph signing off.
If you enjoyed the fascinating information shared in this video and you want more, be sure to hit the subscribe button to Tech Coach Ralph to be notified for new videos.